This Saturday from London, England, we have got UFC 286 in the main event. It is the trilogy fight between Kamaru Usman and Leon Edwards for the welterweight championship. And in the co-main event, we have got a lightweight fight between Justin Gaethje taking on Rafael Fiziev. 15 fights on this UFC 286 card. Also opening up the main card, we've got Marvin Vettori taking on Roman Dolidze. So again, 15 fights in this card. And folks, if you haven't yet though, make sure that subscribe button down below for some more UFC here on the channel. Let's get into this 15 fight card. So our first fight is the Ultimate Fighter winner in Juliana Miller. She'll be taking on her opponent, and coming back into the UFC, we have got Veronica Macedo. I mean, I guess she never left. Her last fight was the first fight, actually, of the pandemic over in Brazil on that Kevin Lee Charles Oliveira card in Brazil. She was the first fight on that card. Of course, the card with no crowd. She loses to Bia Malecki by unanimous decision. She has not fought since early 2020. It will be over 3 years when she fights Juliana Miller in London since her last fight. And for, I guess, Veronica Hardy now, I guess that's her new name. 1-3 in the UFC. First fight losing a TKO fight, or losing by TKO in a fight against Ashley Evans Smith. After that, she loses a fight of the night performance by unanimous decision loss against Andrea Lee. Loses to Jillian Robertson after that by rear naked choke in the second round. Beats Polyana Viana in a fight where she submits her in the first round by armbar over in Uruguay on the Shevchenko Carmouche 2 card. And then most recently, of course, losing to Bia Malecki by unanimous decision in a fight where Bia Malecki goes in there and just beats her on the feet for most of that fight. Malecki's able to get some takedowns too, and she's able to land on top in a lot of spots where Veronica Macedo tries to go for takedowns. Macedo goes 0 for 9 with her takedowns in that fight, and Bia Malecki ends up winning the fight, of course, by unanimous decision. For Macedo, she is a huge underdog, about plus 325. She'll be taking on the reigning Ultimate Fighter winner in Juliana Miller. Miller 3-1 now in her professional career, winning that Ultimate Fighter finale against Brogan Walker, where she beats her in the third round by TKO. And again, that was the thing with Juliana Miller going into the Ultimate Fighter season, not much pro experience, but she goes in, she beats Claire Guthrie in the first fight by unanimous decision, of the only fight that she had lost in her pro career going into the Ultimate Fighter show. Really good fight with her and Guthrie back and forth on the feet. Then she went on to the second round of the second fight in that Ultimate Fighter season and beat Caitlin Neal by Kimura submission in the second round. Caitlin Neal is a fighter who's gone to PFL on their Challenger series, and she's gone in there and won a fight as well. So Caitlin Neal, good fighter as well, and Juliana Miller went in there and got the submission victory in the second round. That's where Juliana Miller is best at. She's really good on the ground. She can brawl on the feet, as you did see in the Claire Guthrie fight in their first fight in the Ultimate Fighter. But again, Juliana Miller excels in the ground. Veronica Macedo, not that great down there either. I mean, again, submitted by Jillian Robertson in the past. She did submit a really good grappler, in all fairness, not Jillian Robertson, in Polyana Viana, but still, I think Juliana Miller should be able to beat Macedo on the feet. She should be able to beat her on the ground. It is going to be one-way traffic for the first fight here of this London card. I got Juliana Miller to win by submission. I think she'll get it done in the second round. I don't think it's that close. So Juliana Miller wins the first fight of this card with the second round submission. So next up, we have got Jai Herbert taking on Ludovic Klein. And for Jai Herbert, of course, 2-3 so far in the UFC. And, you know, Jai Herbert, it's kill or be killed in there. I know his last fight he did win by unanimous decision, did not get a finish in the Kyle Nelson fight. And it was a fight where Jai Herbert does go to the wrestling a lot in the third round. He wins that third round because of his top control time against Kyle Nelson. In the second round, Herbert wins by outstriking Nelson. In the first round, though, Jai Herbert falls behind. Kyle Nelson definitely wins that first round. Herbert down 1-0, comes back, rallies, wins the second and third rounds. And for the Black Country banger in Jai Herbert, you know he's got power. You've seen his fight against Kama Worthy on the Coast of Vettori card back in 2021, but you've also seen this guy can get knocked out too. The Francisco Trinaldo fight on Fight Island in July of 2020, and then of course the Ilia Topuria fight where Jai Herbert shows in that fight, and that is the prime example for me of a Jai Herbert fight. You go in that first round, Jai Herbert goes in there, he knocks down Ilia Topuria in the first round. He wins the first round against a guy who's undefeated in Topuria, who just came off that big win against Bryce Mitchell. And in the second round, though, Herbert gets flatlined. Ilia Topuria goes in there, knocks him out, and then that really does it for the Black Country banger in that fight. But again, Herbert comes back. He beats Kyle Nelson on that Blades Aspinall card again in July of 2022. He'll be taking on a guy, though, Ludovic Klein, who is a very good striker. Now, Ludovic Klein has not gotten a finish in the UFC since his first fight against Shane Young back in 2020, and did drop back-to-back fights after that. against Michael Trizano and against Nate Landwehr, but back-to-back wins for Klein over the likes of Devontae Smith and Mason Jones. And that Mason Jones fight is a huge result out of Ludovic Klein. Jones, a guy who's 11-1, the only loss being to Mike Davis. And in London, Ludovic Klein goes in there, beats him by unanimous decision, knocks down at Mason Jones in the second round, and 30-27s him. I mean, Ludovic Klein showed the wrestling in that fight, he showed the striking in that fight, he showed the power, he showed he can get down to the ground as well. It's probably Ludovic Klein's best performance to date. But in this fight specifically with Jai Herbert, you're going to get two guys who are going to try to go out there and they're going to try a throw, and they're going to try and knock each other out. Again, Jai Herbert, it is kill or be killed in the octagon. And for Ludovic Klein, again, maybe not the best power guy, but you look at his last couple of fights, again, no finishes, but the Shane Young fight knockout, you look at his fights before the UFC as well in octagon, he's going to go in there, he's going to try and knock you out if he can. Of course, couldn't do that against Smith and Jones, but I think this is going to be a type of fight. And again, if you're getting into a fight with Jai Herbert, and if you're going to beat Jai Herbert, it'll likely be by knockout. But if you lose, it'll likely be by knockout as well. I think Ludovic Klein's going to go in there. I think he's going to knock out Jai Herbert. I think that's going to happen. Again, I could definitely see a world where Jai Herbert goes in there and knocks out Klein, because again, that's just how Jai Herbert fights. He's a long, lanky fighter who is going to, put it on you. He's got power. He's 6'1" for a lightweight, which is kind of crazy. But Ludovic Klein, again, exact opposites. Ludovic Klein, 5'7" at lightweight. We're going to see. I think, though, Klein can close the distance, fire off his big power shots, and I think he's going to put down Jai Herbert, and I think we'll get it done in the first round. I think you're going to see a crazy first round that eventually will be won by the -165 favorite in Ludovic Klein. Give me Klein to beat Jai Herbert in London by first round knockout. So really surprised this fight is this low on the card. We've got the former title challenger in Jennifer Maia, and she'll be taking on one of the most hyped up prospects, I would say, in this 125-pound division. I went over this a couple weeks ago when Alexa Grasso fought Valentina Shevchenko. Now, I did not think that Alexa Grasso was going to beat Shevchenko for the world championship, but we talked about it, how, and I said going into that prediction, I think Valentina's title run is coming to an end. I didn't think it was going to end with Alexa Grasso. Obviously, it did. But when you look at the top of that weight class and you look at the fighters, the new fighters at 125, you're looking at Alexa Grasso, you're looking at Erin Blanchfield, you're looking at Tyler Santos, Manon Filho, and the other fighter I was like, maybe can make a run with the belt, it's Casey O'Neill. And now Casey O'Neill has not fought since her win where she retired Roxanne Modafferi in Houston on that Adesanya Whitaker card early in 2022. She beats Modafferi by split decision. It's an interesting fight. Casey O'Neill puts it on Roxanne Modafferi for the first two rounds, and really the third round too. It doesn't make sense how that fight was a split decision. I guess just Texas judges, because they're always weird over there in Texas, because Casey O'Neill puts it on Roxanne Modafferi. Again, if you outstrike an opponent 229 to 120, I mean, she outstruck her by 109 significant strikes. And one judge had the audacity, I think it was Robert Alexander, as I'm looking here. Yeah, Robert Alexander scored it for Roxanne Modafferi. I do not know what's going on there. Because again, Casey O'Neill, undefeated in the UFC, 4-0. She's undefeated professionally, 9-0. And by far, this is the biggest, challenge for her to date. And again, the Roxanne Modafferi fight, she was not... Casey O'Neill shot in for 2 takedowns, didn't get them. She was really, in the fight against Roxanne Modafferi's striking is not very good, so you're going to go in there, you're going to try to outstrike her, and that's what Casey O'Neill did. Again, Modafferi's got no power that's going to really pose a threat on the other side, so O'Neill's just able to go in there, hit her strikes, and get out of there with the victory. Now again, she took some damage in that fight, don't get me wrong, but there was no threat of her getting knocked out. When you look at her other fights in the UFC, her first fight's a Shanna Dobson fight. Shanna Dobson was horrible in the UFC. Dobson 4-4 going in that fight. Casey O'Neill goes in there and knocks her out, or TKOs her in the second round. She beats Laura Procopio after that, where she submits her with a standing rear naked choke win in the third round. And then after that, she beats Antonina Shevchenko by TKO in the second round of their fight in October of 2021. Now, she's going to be taking on Jennifer Maia, who did drop 2 straight fights after beating Jessica Ai after Maia's fighting against Valentina Shevchenko at UFC 255, a fight that was, I guess, most remembered for Maia winning that second round against Valentina. She takes down Shevchenko in that second round. You're thinking, oh, okay, we got a 1-1 tie, I guess, going into the third round. And then Valentina goes in there, wins rounds 3, 4, 5, wins the fight pretty decisively, 49-46. But Maia comes back. She beats Jessica Ai. She loses to Kevin Kuchagian. She loses to Manon Filho. But she beats Marina Moroz in her last fight by unanimous decision. It's a fight that I didn't watch live, but Jennifer Maia goes in there. Really, it was just a straight stand-up fight. The close round, I guess you can say, is the second back and forth second round. The first round, though, definitely Jennifer Maia's, and the third round, definitely Jennifer Maia's as well. Maia now gets Casey O'Neill. It's an interesting fight. It really is, because pure stand-up wise, I think Jennifer Maia's striking game is getting a lot better, and her ground game is good. You know how good her jiu-jitsu is, but I feel like Casey O'Neill is the stronger fighter. I feel like Casey O'Neill is just, again, a much younger version of Jennifer Maia. Maybe not with the jiu-jitsu skills, but with the all-around grappling skills. I think Casey O'Neill should have an advantage down there just because, again, unless she gets caught with a submission out of Jennifer Maia, I think she should be fine. And then on the feet, I know Maia's striking has gotten better, but I think Casey O'Neill is still able to go out there. I think she's able to outstrike her, considering what we did get out of her in the Roxanne Modafferi fight. So give me the minus 180 favorite. Give me the Scottish-born fighter, of course, here, and Casey O'Neill. I think she's going to get the victory over Jennifer Maia. I just don't know what Maia does that's so much better than what Casey O'Neill has to bring. So give me King Casey O'Neill to beat Jennifer Maia. She's going to get it done by unanimous decision. All right, next up, we have got Jake Hadley. He'll be taking on Malcolm X Gordon. Of course, Hadley coming in off that last win against Carlos Candelario by triangle choke in the second round. That was on the Rodriguez Lemos card late in November 2022. Beats Candelario by triangle choke in the second round. And it was a good win for Hadley because his first one in the UFC, he loses to Alan Nascimento. It's a fight where he gets dominated on the ground. Nascimento had 10 minutes of control time in that fight. And, you know, Hadley was a guy who was coming off the Contender Series. He beats Mitch Raposo over there. He's a guy who misses weight on the Contender. A lot of the, you know, Dana White's guys did not want him to sign Jake Hadley. Apparently he had a bad attitude. Of course, he missed weight as well. But still, Dana offered him the contract. And, of course, Hadley took it. But he loses his first fight against Nascimento. He beats Carlos Candelario in his second, and now we get him versus Malcolm X Gordon. Malcolm Gordon, 0-2 to start off his UFC career, lost to Amir Albazi in his first one by triangle choke, and then got knocked out by Sumidarji in his second fight. And then after that, for Gordon, back-to-back wins, though, over the likes of Francisco Figueiredo and Dennis Bondar. He knocks out Bondar in the first round, but really, it's not a knockout. It's a TKO. It's a verbal submission. Bondar hurts his arm, so Malcolm X Gordon gets the win. And then most recently, they gave him Muhammad Mokaev, we're going to talk about in a little bit, but Mokaev goes in there and submits Malcolm Gordon in the third round with an armbar. Now we look at this fight with Jake Hadley and Malcolm Gordon. It's interesting, but something that Malcolm Gordon is not very good at is stuffing takedowns. He's not the best at stuffing takedowns. Now, his jiu-jitsu's not horrible, but he gets taken down at will. Muhammad Mokaev didn't have any problems with him, obviously, but Francisco Figueiredo, who's not the best wrestler by any stretch of the imagination, took down Malcolm Gordon at will. Figueiredo went 2 for 2. And given that maybe that's not at will, but whenever Figueiredo tried it in that third round, he was able to get it. But given Figueiredo allowed Gordon to pop right back up to his feet. Malcolm Gordon had some success wrestling in his own right in that fight, but he did go 2 for 11 on his takedown attempts in that fight. Still, though, like, again, if Francisco Figueiredo is able to take you down, Mokaev's good, but even if Dennis Bondar can take down Malcolm Gordon, who's to say Jake Hadley's not going to take down Malcolm Gordon? And especially, Hadley's at home. He's a big favorite in this one. I think Hadley's going to win this fight. I really do think he is. I think it's another really easy pick to make here. Striking-wise, maybe Malcolm Gordon does have a little more power on the feet. I'm not impressed. I'm not sold yet with the striking game out of Hadley. I'm not really impressed. I guess I'm just not sold with Hadley as a whole right now. But still, in this fight, you've got to take him over Malcolm X Gordon. You just have to. Right? I don't see a pathway to victory for Malcolm Gordon here because I think Jake Hadley's a better wrestler. I think Jake Hadley's a better grappler. And really in a fight like this, that's all that matters, really. All Hadley's got to do in here, he's got to wrestle Gordon, he's got to find his back, and he's got to submit him. I think that's what's going to happen. I think Jake Hadley's going to go in there. I think it's going to be a real quick night in the office for him. So it's going to be Jake Hadley to win this fight, his first one in the UFC in England. He's going to go in there, and he's going to beat Malcolm Gordon in the first round. So Jake Hadley, first round submission victory over Malcolm X Gordon. Next up, we've got Christian Duncan taking on Dusko Todorovic. It is the UFC debut of Christian Leroy Duncan, coming in from the Cage Warriors promotion, of course, winning their middleweight championship back in 2022, defending it once, and now getting the shot here in the UFC. He's undefeated 7-0, and for Christian Duncan, 7 wins, 6 of them are by finish. The man has got crazy power on the feet, and it really should create for a really interesting matchup here with Dusko Todorovic, a guy who is 3-3 in the UFC, who's traded wins and losses so far in the promotion, comes in, beats Daquan Townsend in his first UFC bout, winning by second round TKO, but then losing to Punahele Soriano on ABC, losing to Gregory Rodriguez by unanimous decision, bouncing back though, beating Maki Pitolo by a first round TKO, but then losing to Chidi Njokuani, getting knocked out in the first round, and then he came back though, and he knocked out Jordan Wright with ground and pound in the second round of their fight back late in 2022. So again, Dusko Todorovic, it's either he's going to get knocked out or he's going to get a knockout in return. It's going to be a great fight here. Todorovic, can go for the takedowns, but not really the most accurate guy in terms of takedowns. Only 12% takedown accuracy so far in the UFC. When you look at his last fight against Jordan Wright, he was actually the one getting taken down, and that's where Wright had the advantage in that fight, had the clear advantage in that fight in the first round. Jordan Wright took Dusko Todorovic down, held him down, but in the second round, Wright couldn't take Todorovic down. Todorovic was able to box him up on the feet, and Todorovic ended up winning that fight in that second round. But I don't think the ground game is going to play too much of a factor in this one, because maybe Todorovic tries to take down Duncan. I don't think so. So if that doesn't happen, I think you just see the stand-up fight between Christian Duncan and Dusko Todorovic. It's a fight that, again, in theory, Christian Leroy Duncan should win, right? I think he's better on the feet. I think Todorovic, he's not horrible, but I think there's opportunities where he's going to get hit. Christian Duncan, I think, is the better striker. I think he's the more patient striker, and I think he's going to pick his spots, and I think he's going to eventually put away Dusko Todorovic. Don't get me wrong, I think Todorovic has some power, and I think he's always going to have a puncher's chance in this fight. That's fair, but Christian Duncan, though, again, has got more power. I think he's better technically sound than Dusko Todorovic, and I think the big power shots will come in the direction of Duncan. And again, I think Todorovic is a lot more hittable than Christian Duncan, and Duncan also throws a lot of stuff. I mean, look at his last fight in Cage Warriors, the last fight that he did win to defend his championship, spinning elbow finish for him. His win to win the championship back in early 2022 was a flying knee finish. Again, Leroy Duncan's going to throw some crazy stuff at you, but also he can be technical and he can wait if he does have to go to that pathway as well. But I think it's going to be a crazy fight in the first round, and I think it's going to end in that first round. So it's going to be the UFC newcomer and the reigning Cage Warriors middleweight champion in Christian Leroy Duncan to win his UFC debut, beating Dusko Todorovic by first round knockout. Next up, we've got Muhammad Mokaev in his fourth UFC bout, taking on Filho. And for Filho, making his UFC debut, coming off that win in the Contender Series, winning by a big finish in that third round, hit him with a left hook, finished him on the ground. Good win for Filho in that fight. He'll be taking on Muhammad Mokaev, though, in this fight. And for Filho, again, a good fighter who picked up a win over a guy in Vinicius Salvador, who is also in the UFC now before his shot in the Contender Series. And Salvador is a pretty solid guy. Beat Shannon Ross in the Contender. He'll be seeing Victor Altamirano, I believe, on next week's cards. We're going to be talking about Vinicius Salvador on the San Antonio card with Chito Vera and Corey Sandhagen in the main event. But Filho's a pretty solid guy. He's got a solid stand-up game, as you saw in the Contender Series, and his grappling is really good as well. 8 wins, 8 out of the 14 wins for Filho are by submission, and then 5 of the 14 are by knockout. Filho's got hands, man. He's got some power, and he will test you on the ground as well. I think it is another very good test for Muhammad Mokaev. Now, I don't think anyone thinks that Mokaev's not going to win this fight, because he should win this fight. But you know what the UFC's doing? They are building Muhammad Mokaev up really slowly. He's 22 years old. He's undefeated. He's 8-0 as a pro, 22-0 as an amateur, so 30-0 combined record for Muhammad Mokaev in MMA. And, they've been building him up slowly. You look at his first fight, he submits Cody Durden in the first round by guillotine in under a minute. Then he beats Charles Johnson by unanimous decision again in London, goes to Abu Dhabi, beats Malcolm X Gordon by armbar in the third round, a fight that he was dominating in, a fight that he was, controlling on the ground. And now you get him back here in London taking on Filho. I mean, I think it is one of the tougher matchups to date for Muhammad Mokaev. I think Charles Johnson is probably the toughest matchup he's had so far in his second fight, and that was Johnson's first fight in the UFC. But Filho is a good guy. Again, Filho is a good fighter who is going to test Muhammad Mokaev on the ground. I don't think it's going to be, a walk in the park for Mokaev, that if you can just take him down, control Filho on the ground, and just take his back and submit him. I don't think it's going to be that easy for Muhammad Mokaev in this fight. If it is, that's going to be really impressive for Mokaev if he's able to do that against a guy who's really talented on the ground in Filho. And we'll see some of the stand-up game with Mokaev. I don't really think you're going to see much of it, obviously. Mokaev, again, a guy who's going to wrestle you pretty much throughout the entire fight. We'll see if at all he tests the stand-up game with Filho, because I think Filho does have a slight advantage up there. But on the ground, though, it's going to be all Muhammad Mokaev. I mean, I think maybe he's got to be a little bit worried of, Filho threatening off his back maybe with submissions. But again, Mokaev has dealt with good jiu-jitsu guys in the past. He's dealt with good wrestlers in the past, and he's taken them down. He's held them down. I don't think Mokaev's able to get a submission here. I think it will be very tough on him to do so. So I'm going to go the safe route here. I'm going to take Muhammad Mokaev by decision. But again, at minus 750 at the time of making the graphics, I think now that those odds for Mokaev have swelled all the way up to minus 800 for a reason. Again, money on Muhammad Mokaev. I don't really see a pathway for him losing this fight. The only way he loses this fight is if he can't get a takedown and Filho's directing the pace and directing where this fight's going. I don't see that happening. We haven't seen that yet in the UFC career of Muhammad Mokaev, where he hasn't been able to dictate where the fight's ending up. So give me the minus 800 favorite now, and Muhammad Mokaev to improve to 4-0 in the UFC, continuing his undefeated record as a mixed martial arts, both in the amateur and the professional route. So give me Muhammad Mokaev to win this fight over Filho. I got him to win by unanimous decision. So next up, we've got a fight with two UFC newcomers. We've got Sam Patterson taking on Yanal Ashmoz here in this fight. And for Sam Patterson, picking up his UFC contract, winning on the Contender Series in his last one, picking up a rear naked choke finish in the second round. Again, UFC debut for him. He was coming in from Brave before he got a shot on the Contender. Huge winning streak for him, 5-fight winning streak over there in the Brave CF promotion. And for Sam Patterson, he'll be taking on Yanal Ashmoz in this fight. And for Ashmoz, picking up his last win on the PFL Challenger Series, beating Dennis Hughes by unanimous decision. And real quick, talking about the PFL, just want to shout out my guy, Impa Kasanganai, who won on Friday night, winning on the Contender Series, or the Challenger Series, excuse me, picking up his contract with the PFL. That's really exciting. Really excited to see him with the PFL in 2023 at the 205-pound weight class. And also Bellator was on the same night. I was at the Bellator card, got a picture with Vadim Nemkov outside the SAP Center. That was interesting and random. But anyways, Yanal Ashmoz taking on Sam Patterson this one. And for Yanal Ashmoz, 6-0 professionally. Again, splitting through different promotions, Ring of Combat, CFFC, and then of course with the PFL with that one fight. Before Ashmoz in that one fight in the PFL, looked really good. Again, dominated with the wrestling and dominated with the striking as well, but it was really just a dominant wrestling performance out of Yanal Ashmoz in that fight, and it wasn't necessarily, I guess, what the PFL was looking for, because it was just pure wrestling out of Yanal Ashmoz in that fight, and that's likely what he will try to do against Sam Patterson. But Patterson, a really good grappling guy as well. Patterson with 5 submission wins in his career as well. Half of his wins are by submission. So, if Ashmoz does go to the grappling, again, Patterson, I think, will be ready. And on the feet, I do like Patterson more than Yanal Ashmoz as well. Ashmoz does hit hard, and he does throw big winging strikes, but I mean, most of his fight on the Challenger Series was wrestling against Hughes. I mean, that's really all he did in that fight. And again, that's probably why he wasn't awarded the contract in that one, because it wasn't, the most impressive performance. I mean, it was a good wrestling performance out of Ashmoz, but again, when you're trying to fight for a contract like on the Contender or the Challenger Series, you don't want to see wrestling for 15 minutes. Again, he's a good wrestler, and I think it's going to be an interesting stylistic matchup for Sam Patterson, because Patterson's going to have to fight that off throughout the entire fight. But again, I feel like Ashmoz is going to be kind of one-dimensional in this fight. If he cannot take down Sam Patterson, I think it's going to be a tough night in the office for him. And then even if he does take down Sam Patterson, then he's got to worry about getting submitted off his back or while he's on top. And again, I think, and then another side of this thing is, what if Sam Patterson takes Yanal Ashmoz down? Because that can 100% happen as well, because Patterson's ground game is really good as well. Again, you saw in his fight in the Contender Series where he got his UFC contract, his ground game is nice. So I think you're going to see that, honestly. I think you're going to see what Ashmoz wants to do to Patterson. I think Patterson's going to do right to him. I think Patterson's going to take him down. He's going to find a way to get Ashmoz on his back or on the ground. And I think Patterson is going to find a way to get a submission. So I'm going to take Sam Patterson here in his first UFC outing against another UFC newcomer in Yanal Ashmoz. I think Sam Patterson's going to go in there. I think just like on his Contender Series win, I think he's going to get a second-round submission win over Yanal Ashmoz, getting it done in his UFC debut. So we got a fight where, I think we know where we're going here. It's a fight to get Jack Shore back on the winning ways. I mean, his last fight, he gets submitted by Ricky Simone. It's a fight that Shore kind of runs out of gas in the second round. I mean, Ricky Simone tired him out, and Ricky Simone drops Jack Shore in the second round in their fight in Long Island, New York on the Ortega Rodriguez card. And again, Jack Shore loses his first fight professionally. This is his first loss in the UFC, because before that, the man was on a run in the UFC, beats Nolan Hernandez in his first fight by a naked choke in the third round, submits Aaron Phillips in the second round in his second fight, then beats Hunter Azure by split decision, beats Ludovic Shorilan in his next fight by unanimous decision, and then beats Timur Valiev by unanimous decision, but then runs in again to Ricky Simone, a true top 15 guy in the weight class. Jack Shore is as well, but a real top 15 guy in Ricky Simone. And Simone submits him in the second round. Don't know where Ricky Simone is. Oh, I forgot. He's going to be fighting Song Yadong coming up next month. That's going to be exciting. But again, for Jack Shore, he's a minus 500 favorite in this fight. Again, he is a huge favorite against his opponent in Mr. Finland and Makwan Amirkhani. And Amirkhani, I mean, the guy's lost 4 out of his last 5. His only win being the Mike Grundy fight, where that fight was, I don't remember the exact circumstances with Grundy in that one. I think, was it like Grundy's dad, has cancer and he's got terminal cancer. He's not going to be around for much longer. And they're hyping that up a lot going to the fight during Grundy's walkout. And then Amirkhani submits him in under a minute with the Anaconda. And you're like, oh, man, okay. Like, I believe that's how that fight went. But again, Amirkhani Picks up his only win really since 2020, beating Mike Grundy by Amirkhani choke in the first round. His other losses, though, the losing streak started with a loss to Edson Barbosa by unanimous decision. They lose to Camwell Kirk in a fight that he's a favorite in. Gets knocked out by Leron Murphy in his next fight at UFC 267, beats Grundy, and then loses to JSP in Jonathan Pearce in his last fight in the second round via TKO. A fight that he gets pretty much dominated in. Amirkhani had a little bit of success with wrestling, but I mean, really, when it came to inflicting damage, there was nothing Amirkhani did in that fight that threatened Jonathan Pearce at all, and Jonathan Pearce is a really good fighter. Again, Jonathan Pearce is able to take down Makwan Amirkhani at will. Who's to say Jack Shore is not going to be able to take him down at will as well, right? That's how I kind of see this fight. I think it's going to be easy pickings for Jack Shore in this fight. I think it's going to be takedowns after takedowns after takedowns. I think there's a chance he gets a finish. I'm going to go the safe pick. I'm going to say decision for Jack Shore, though. I don't really know what Makwan Amirkhani does here to really threaten Jack Shore, for being honest with ourselves. He's not going to knock him out. That's not going to happen. And then maybe the only way I see Amirkhani potentially finding a way to win this fight, he's got to finish him. He's got to find him in a submission. He's got to catch him in something. He's got to catch him in a scramble. He's got to catch him, again, when Jack Shore's off guard, and you got to hope that Jack Shore has not recovered since his loss to Ricky Simone. I don't see that to be the case. I think Jack Shore is going to get back on his winning ways, and I think he's going to beat Makwan Amirkhani, and I think he'll get it done with the wrestling. I think it'll be pure takedowns at Jack Shore and pure control time. Give me Shore to win this one by unanimous decision. Now we've got Chris Duncan taking on Omar Morales. About even odds for this fight, which I get. But Omar Morales is a guy, though, losing his last two fights, and both by finish, and both in the second round. The Eros Medic lost in his last fight. He gets TKO'd in the second round. That was in mid-2022. That was on the Kelton Vieira and Holly Holm card, showing you how long ago that fight was. And then before that, for Morales, he got submitted by JSP Jonathan Pearce by second round rear naked choke on UFC 266, Volkanovski versus Ortega. But, I mean, JSP's really good. I mean, since losing to Joe Lozon in his first fight in the UFC, Jonathan Pearce has been on a roll. He's on a 5-fight winning streak. I don't know. I kind of like his odds against Bryce Mitchell. I'm not going to lie. But Morales, again, loses to Pearce and Eros Medic in back-to-back fights. Beats Shane Young before that by unanimous decision. Loses to Giga Chikadze by unanimous decision. And then beats Gabriel Mowgli Benitez before that by unanimous decision. Oh, his first fight in the UFC, actually. Dung Hyung Ma, unanimous decision win over in Busan, South Korea. But again, recently has not been great at Morales. You look at his fight against Medic. Medic has his way with Morales on the feet, knocking down Morales twice. And again, just a really good performance in that one for Eros Medic. And before that, for Morales, again, it was the opposite. He was getting taken down at will. Jonathan Pearce had him down for basically the entire fight. And just two differing ways of how Morales got beat. Again, the first fight, he gets beat on the feet. The first fight, he loses on the ground to Pearce. And the second fight, he gets beat on the feet against Eros Medic. Now you get Morales versus Chris Duncan, and this is going to be interesting because Chris Duncan's a guy coming off, 3 fights in Bellator, went 3-0 in that promotion. Now got shot in the Contender Series, and he lost to Slavikaz Borshev with a second round knockout. Got caught with the left hook, wins a fight outside the UFC, gets a shot back on the Contender Series against Charlie Campbell, and he finishes Charlie Campbell by first round knockout in a fight that he was an underdog in. And now you get Chris Duncan taking on the 37-year-old lightweight in Omar Morales. It should be a good fight because when you look at Chris Duncan, I don't really see. I mean, we might see some wrestling. He tried to take down Borshev a couple times, but I think you're going to see Duncan and Morales probably swinging on the feet. And I think it should result in someone probably getting knocked out. It does result in a very fan-friendly style of fight. And again, with even odds, you don't know what's going to happen here, but I'm going to I think Duncan has swelled to a very slight favorite over Omar Morales, and I think he's going to win the fight. I think Chris Duncan is going to find a way to knock out Omar Morales, and I think it's going to happen in the first round. I think, again, you can see both these guys throw. Actually, I'll change that. Second round knockout for Chris Duncan. Like Morales' last two losses, I think you get another second round loss from Morales, and I think it will be by Chris Duncan knockout. Again, I like Duncan's power on the feet. I think Duncan, again, with his capability of putting guys down like he did against Charlie Campbell in the Contender Series, I think that shows a lot in this fight. And again, Morales is a guy, though, losing 2 straight fights. You don't know how he's going to be coming into this one. It's a guy who started his professional career off 10-0. He's now 11-3. I think it's going to make a huge difference, his mindset going into this fight, because I think Duncan, again, is going to blitz him, and I think Chris Duncan is going to find a way to put Omar Morales down. So give me Chris Duncan in his UFC debut to win. I got him to get this one done by second round knockout. Next up, we got a fight that was just announced. That's why I don't have odds just yet on it, but Someone Zoe has got to go. We've got the UFC newcomer in it, Gabriel Santos, the reigning LFA featherweight champion, winning that championship early in 2023 with a huge knockout finish to the body against Jose Delano, winning that tournament to become the featherweight champion over there in LFA, and he'll be taking on the undefeated Lerone Murphy. And for Lerone Murphy, I just wish this guy would fight more. We haven't seen him since 2021. He was booked in 2022 against Nate Landwehr. Murphy had to withdraw, and then he was booked for this card against Nathaniel Wood. Of course, Nathaniel Wood could not fight this fight, so now Murphy gets Gabriel Santos instead. But again, I wish Lerone Murphy fought more, just because the guy is fun to watch. He's got a lot of power on the feet, especially for being a featherweight. You saw his last finish over Makwan Amirkhani. Crazy knockout finish, catches him just with the knee right up the middle and puts him down and wins by second round knockout. But that was all the way back at the Jan Blachowicz Glover Teixeira card. That was a long time ago on Fight Island. And when you break down Lerone Murphy's run so far in the UFC, he comes in UFC 242, he gets a spot against Zubair Tuhugov. He's a plus 245 underdog in that fight, and he takes him to a split draw. Then he fights Ricardo Ramos after that. He's an underdog in that fight, and he finishes Ricardo Ramos in the first round with ground and pound. Then runs into Douglas Silva de Andrade, beats him by unanimous decision, and then beats Makwan Amirkhani in his last fight by second round knockout. Now he gets Gabriel Santos, a guy who, good striking, good ground game. You look at his 2 wins in LFA. I mean, I think they build Santos as a guy who's going to try to go in there. He's going to try to submit you, a really good grappler. But then when he comes into LFA, his 2 wins are both by finish, and they're both by finish on the feet. You look at his first fight in a main event spot against Marcio Barbosa. He goes in there and he finishes Barbosa with a huge head kick, finishes him on the ground at 9 seconds into the second round. And then his fight to win the LFA featherweight championship, he beats Jose Delano, gets him with a liver punch, sits him down, and that's how Santos wins that fight. So again, Santos is both of his wins so far in LFA, and I would assume his only wins in LFA nowadays in the UFC, have been by finish. It makes for a very interesting matchup with Lerone Murphy, especially if Santos is able to strike with Lerone Murphy and stay competitive with Lerone Murphy on the feet. But Lerone Murphy, again, a really good striker, which will make it tough for Santos, especially in Santos' first fight in the UFC. You get a guy like Murphy who is undefeated, who's got 3 wins already under his belt in the promotion. Again, it's just a difficult fight, I think, for Gabriel Santos. But then when you look at the ground game, okay, maybe an advantage for Gabriel Santos down there as well. Again, didn't see it much in LFA, of course, because he was doing so well with the striking, but maybe we do see Gabriel Santos turn to the wrestling and turn to the grappling and see if he can submit Lerone Murphy down there. I don't know if he's going to be able to do that successfully. I think he's going to try, but I think Lerone Murphy is going to be able to do enough to keep the fight standing, and I think if the fight does stay standing, I think eventually Lerone Murphy will get the finish. I think Lerone Murphy is faster than Gabriel Santos, and I think he's got more power. So I'm going to take Lerone Murphy to win this fight. I'm going to take him again by knockout. Give me Lerone Murphy to go in there. I think he's going to pick up a second round knockout finish. Murphy, again, remains undefeated in the UFC and remains undefeated professionally with a second round knockout win over Gabriel Santos. Interesting fight here to kick off the main card at 185 pounds. We have got Marvin Vettori taking on his opponent in Roman Dolidze here. It's interesting because Marvin Vettori, again, one of the better wrestlers in the weight class, gets a guy in Roman Dolidze who is a good wrestler in his own right, but who has, been taken down before in the past. You look at his Jack Hermansson win. Again, it's known for the finish, where it's a great finish for Dolidze. He's got Hermansson tied up on his, or I guess Dolidze's got the back and he's got Hermansson all tied up, and he finishes him with strikes like sort of with a back crucifix. It's a crazy finish for Roman Dolidze, something that I haven't seen before. And it was a fight that was close going into that point. But again, it's just an interesting finish for Roman Dolidze because he's got him kind of in an arm bar, a knee bar, but then Hermansson goes back and then Dolidze traps his leg and then it's interesting. He pushes Hermansson down and just starts unloading with strikes, and there's no way Hermansson can get out. So Dolidze just traps his leg. I think it was with a calf slicer, and there's nothing Hermansson can do, so Dolidze wins the fight. And Dolidze, very talented on the ground. I think that's where Marvin Vettori has got to worry a little bit in this fight. Because, again, Dolidze is tricky down there. He's really tricky, and he's on a 3-fight winning streak. He took that Hermansson fight on short notice. That was supposed to be Darren Till, right? I believe that was supposed to be Darren Till, yeah. No. No, it was supposed to be Brunson, right? Till was the fight that ended up being Chris Curtis for Hermansson. Anyways, Dolidze takes that short notice. He wins the fight. He's on a 3-fight finish streak, 3-fight winning streak, or actually more, 4-fight winning streak, if you include the Staropoli win, winning by unanimous decision. But he beats Kyle Dawkins by knockout in the first round. It was a fight that he was an underdog in. It was one of the first fights of that card in Austin, Texas, and he goes in there and eventually finished him in that first round with a huge knee, then beats Phil Phil Hawes by knocking him out with hooks in the first round, and then gets Jack Hermanson beating him in the second round with that TKO finish. That's all fun and games, but can he beat Marvin Vettori? Because the thing is, he's not going to knock out Marvin, because Marvin's got a crazy chin. I mean, Marvin, no one's going to knock out Marvin Vettori. He's got one of the better chins in MMA. I mean, he has got a big head that will likely not get knocked out. Marvin Vettori's going to stand there and he will eat punches for days. I mean, you look at the Robert Whittaker fight, look at the Paulo Costa fight, look at the Israel Adesanya fight. Again, even look at the Jack Hermanson fight. Vettori eats bombs. And what, he still hasn't been dropped yet in his career? That's how good Vettori is stand-up wise. His striking may not be the best, but in all, if you include his chin, man, Vettori's tough to crack. He is. And the way to beat Marvin is the way Adesanya's done it twice, and the way Robert Whittaker just did in his last fight in Paris. You're gonna have to outstrike him on the feet. You're not looking for a knockout. You're just gonna have to outpoint him. Can Roman Dolidze really outpoint Marvin Vettori? I don't think so. Because if you get a straight stand-up fight, I'm still taking Marvin. I think Marvin's stand-up game is better than Dolidze. I think Dolidze, what he offers to the plate, which makes him makes him good and dangerous on the feet, is the power. He's got dangerous power on the feet, Dolidze does. But you've seen fights before where Dolidze does go on the feet, and it is 15 minutes, and he is striking for most of the fight, and you're mixing it up with a little bit of the wrestling. I'm looking at the Trevin Giles fight. He does get tired eventually. Again, he's 6-1 in the UFC, and that is his only loss so far in the promotion. It was on the Brunson Holland card back in March of 2021, so it has been a while. It has been 2 years, but that's the last time I saw Dolidze going the full 15 in the fight. And actually, even the Staropoli fight, he tires at the end of that fight. He beat Staropoli in that third, but it's not the dominant performance that Dolidze had in the first 2 rounds that he carries in the third. Don't get me wrong, he still wins the third round against Loriano Staropoli, but we're talking about a guy in Staropoli and not Marvin Vettori. Because likely, I think Vettori is going to take down Dolidze. I think he's going to take down Dolidze, and I think he's going to keep top control against Dolidze for most of the fight. I don't think Dolidze is going to be able to do much reversing Vettori, because Vettori's top pressure is so good. Vettori is very good, on top. And I don't see Dolidze reversing for positioning like he did against Jack Hermanson, because again, it is a different level with Marvin Vettori and Jack Hermanson. It just truly is with wrestling and with top pressure and top control. So I think Vettori wins on the ground, and on the feet, again, I like Vettori as well, because I think Vettori's got better technical striking, and I don't think he's going to knock out Dolidze, but I don't think Dolidze is going to have a chance of knocking him out, because again, that's how good Vettori's chin is. I've seen him with Whittaker, Adesanya, Costa. He's been there with big, heavy hitters, and he hasn't been put down once. I don't think Dolidze is the guy to crack the code, especially because Dolidze, let's be honest, just kind of wings out big punches and big knees and big spinning back fists, and that's how he tries to put away guys. It's not going to be enough against a guy who's a true top 5 middleweight in Marvin Vettori. But again, Dolidze is trying to get to that top 5. I don't think it's with this fight. I think Vettori's going to take him down. I think it might not be the most impressive fight, because I think it might be a little bit boring if Vettori just kind of goes back to the well. Dolidze is not able to flip positioning at all. And I think Marvin Vettori goes in there, and I think he beats Roman Dolidze. I think he'll get it done by unanimous decision to open off the main card. All right, next fight on the main card, we have got Gunnar Nelson taking on Bryan Barberena, and another fight where Bryan Barberena takes on somewhat short notice. This was supposed to be Gunnar Nelson versus D-Rod, Daniel Rodriguez, and in comes Bryan Barberena once more like he's done before, and this is a good one. Barberena's been in there in his last fight. I mean, we knew it was a mismatch. We knew Rafael Dos Anjos was going to go in there and beat the living hell out of Bryan Barberena. I mean, it was a painless end to that fight, because again, Dos Anjos went in there and he just took him down at will, and he submitted him with a rear naked choke in the second round. Again, it was all Rafael Dos Anjos in that fight. But the thing is, Gunnar Nelson's a guy who likely is going to try to do the same exact thing. And Gunnar Nelson had not fought in 3 years when he beat Takashi Sato, when he beats him by unanimous decision on the Volkov Aspinall card in London. He 30-26 is Sato. It is not a competitive fight. But again, like what we saw out of what RDA tried to do with Bryan Barberena, you're likely going to see the same thing out of Gunnar Nelson. I mean, Gunnar Nelson's not going to play around with Bryan Barberena on the feet. You know what Barberena likes to do. He is going to try to swing. He wants to stay on the feet, and he wants a brawl. That is the Bryan Barberena type of fight. But what Bryan Barberena does not excel in is stuffing takedowns. Rafael Dos Anjos took him down 4 times. Robbie Lawler did not take him down, because Robbie Lawler was willing to engage in that firefight with Bryan Barberena on the feet. So Barberena wins that fight by knockout in the second round. Barberena got taken down 5 times by Matt Brown. It's a fight that he barely beats Matt Brown in. I thought Brown should have won that fight. It's fine. Barberena gets the split decision nod in Columbus, Ohio. Darian Weeks took him down 4 times. Jason Witt took him down 8 times in a fight that Barberena loses to Jason Witt. Anthony Ivy, who is no longer in the UFC, took down Bryan Barberena down 5 times. Still, Barberena wins the fight, but I'm just saying, when you get some of these better grapplers and you get these guys who, once they do take you down, it is trouble on the ground, like Gunnar Nelson. It's just tough for Bryan Barberena, I think, in this fight, because I don't think Gunnar Nelson is going to be willing to engage in that straight, crazy fight on the feet. And I feel like people forget how long Gunnar Nelson has been in the UFC for. He's been in the promotion for 11 years. First win, it's a rear naked choke finish in the first round against DeMarcus Johnson on UFC on Fuel TV 5. The main event of that card is Stefan Struve knocking out Stipe Miocic in the second round in their fight over in the United Kingdom. It has been a while for Gunnar Nelson. He's been fighting the promotion for a while. Before the Takashi Sato win, he had not fought again in 3 years, and his last 2 fights were losses in a split decision fight against Leon Edwards and a unanimous decision loss to Gilbert Burns. Gunnar Nelson's losses are good fighters. He lost to Santiago Ponzinibbio, and Ponzinibbio is on that big winning streak. He lost to Damian Maia back on a UFC 194 on the Aldo McGregor card, and that's when Damian Maia was still trying to contend for a world championship. And the one outlier, I guess, is Rick Story. It was a fight that Gunnar was a minus 370 favorite in. He loses to Rick Story by split decision. Again, you know how good Barberena is. You know what Barberena does. He tries to go in there. He's going to try to swing. He's going to try to knock you out. But he's not going to be given that opportunity in this fight. I appreciate Bryan Barberena for taking this fight on short notice, but he's not going to be able to keep this fight standing. And it's not like these other fights against Darian Weeks where he's able to pop back up to his feet. Gunnar Nelson's going to take him down, and Gunnar Nelson is going to hold him down, and Gunnar Nelson eventually is going to find that submission in the first round. So give me Gunnar Nelson to beat Bryan Barberena. He's going to get it done by first round submission. It'll be a quick 9 in the office for Gunnar Nelson, improving to 10-5 in the UFC. So the UFC gave Joanne Wood the fight that if she's on a big losing streak, this is the fight she will not lose. There is no chance in hell she loses to Luana Carolina unless Joanne Wood is so washed where she can't outstrike Luana Carolina. Like minus 165 for Joanne Wood looks like a gold mine right now, because she's not gonna. This is how I'll break this fight down. And again, why this is on a main card, I don't know. It's ridiculous. This fight should not be on a main card. And honestly, when I looked at Luana Carolina's UFC record, it surprised me that she was 3-2 because I thought she wasn't as good as 3-2. I forgot she beat Lupi Godinez though in a fight where she weighed 20 more pounds than Lupi Godinez and she wins the fight. That's cool. But I'll tell you why Luana Carolina will not beat Joanne Wood and why Joanne Wood will finally pick up another win. Okay, where is Joanne Wood? Where is she not very good at? Wrestling and grappling, and that's where she'll get taken down, she'll get submitted. And I feel like maybe that was an over-exaggeration though, because actually we said, oh wow, Joanne Wood looked horrible against Alexa Grasso, she looked horrible against Tyler Santos, she looks horrible against Jennifer Maia. Well, all those fighters are top 5 in the weight class. Alexa Grasso's the champion. Tyler Santos almost beat Valentina Shevchenko, and Jennifer Maia is a really good fighter as well, who's got a really good ground game, who fought for a world championship in the past. Lauren Murphy's the exception, but I still think Joanne Wood beat Lauren Murphy. I think she did, and if she won that fight, she would have fought for a world championship next, but she didn't, so she had to fight Tyler Santos, and she lost. Anyways, Joanne Wood, this is a fight she can't lose. There's no chance she loses this fight. Joanne Wood's solid on the feet. She'll go in there and she'll brawl with you. That's how Joanne Wood fights. She does not care. She's got a pretty solid chin, so she's not going to get knocked out by Luana Carolina. So Wood will go in there and she'll brawl with Carolina. Carolina does not have the power to put down Joanne Wood. She's not the technical striking to outstrike Joanne Wood. And Luana Carolina has never successfully converted a takedown attempt in her UFC career. Luana Carolina has not taken anybody down. So this is not going to be the fight where she does it. And I know Wood's defensive wrestling is not good, and defensive grappling is not very good, but it's still good enough to keep the fight on the feet against a fighter in Luana Carolina who has not scored a takedown yet in the promotion. So that's fine. Wood's not going to get taken down. So all she's got to do is go in there and outstrike Luana Carolina, a fighter who was put on a highlight reel by Molly McCann in her last fight in London when Molly McCann spinning back-fisted her in the face. So I think you're good with Luana Carolina, or spinning back elbow, excuse me. But I think you're good with Joanne Wood here. Because I know Joanne Wood's old, she's 37. This honestly might be her last fight if she wins, I think. Or actually, win or lose, I think this is Joanne Wood's last fight. I would think it will be, because I don't anticipate Joanne Wood fighting for a world championship ever. And I think, again, this is the fight where she can just go out with a win and beat Luana Carolina in her last fight. If she can't beat Luana Carolina, well, she shouldn't be fighting anyways, right? So Joanne Wood is going to go in there and she's going to outbox Luana Carolina for 15 minutes. It's not going to be close. It will be a brawl, but I think Joanne Wood so it will be close because Joanne Wood will eat punches. That's what she does. But Joanne Wood will be doing more damage to Luana Carolina. She will be the one pushing forward. It will be kind of like the Jessica I fight in Abu Dhabi on the Conor and Poirier card. Luana Carolina is not going to have any answers for Joanne Wood because Joanne Wood is going to beat her to the punch every single time. Wood is going to close distance and Joanne Wood is going to give more damage off in this fight. And yeah, Joanne Wood's going to win this fight by unanimous decision. Probably winning her last fight, we'll see. But again, give me Joanne Wood to win by unanimous decision. Co-main event, Justin Gaethje, Rafael Fiziev. What a fight at 155 pounds. Because Rafael Fiziev might be the best striker in the weight class. Just put it all together, Rafael Fiziev might be the best striker. But he gets a guy who, Justin Gaethje, I think this fight depends on how Justin Gaethje fights it. I really think it does. It's really dependent on how Gaethje fights. If we get the crazy Justin Gaethje, if we get the Gaethje that fought Chandler, the Gaethje that fought Charles Oliveira, the Gaethje that fought Michael Johnson, Eddie Alvarez, Dustin Poirier, Justin Gaethje is going to get wiped out and he's going to get knocked out in the first round. He cannot be wild and he cannot be crazy against a guy who is as technical as Rafael Fiziev. Fiziev is a sniper in there. He's going to pick apart Justin Gaethje if that's the fight Justin Gaethje wants to fight. Let's be honest with ourselves. He's going to get picked apart. And eventually Gaethje's going to get put down. Eventually Gaethje's going to get knocked out. Because if Charles Oliveira was able to put down, Justin Gaethje, Rafael Fiziev is definitely going to be able to as well. So if we get that crazy Justin Gaethje, who is literally, taking himself off of his feet because he's trying to throw so hard, Gaethje's going to lose. And Gaethje's going to get embarrassed. And I hope he fights like this because, again, take this pick with a grain of salt because we'll get to it eventually. But Justin Gaethje's always been one of my favorite fighters. If Gaethje goes in there and he fights this fight real technical and he fights this fight like how he beat Donald Cerrone or how he beat Tony Ferguson, Edson Barboza, James Vick, if he fights the fight like that or even how he fought Habib, I know he lost the fight, but if he doesn't fight this fight crazy, Justin Gaethje still has a chance to win. I still think he's an underdog if he fights like that, but I still think he has a chance to win the fight. But man, Rafael Fiziev's good. Fiziev's really good. Look at the RDA fight. He beats RDA in the 5th round. Eventually, he gets him by knockout. It was a fight that RDA tried 16 takedowns, only landed 2 of them, and Rafael Fiziev, it was a close fight until that 5th round. I think Fiziev was winning. I think his corner didn't think he was winning. I thought he was up. Maybe it was 2-2. I don't know. I thought it was a close fight. Fiziev eventually goes in there and finishes him in the 5th round, right? The Bryan Riddell fight, incredible finish. Catches Riddell with a wheel kick. Riddell kind of just freezes. And, really good finish and really good stoppage, actually, by Herb Dean in that one. The Bobby Green fight is the one where I'm the only one who, I will fly the flag for Bobby Green until the day I die. Bobby Green's my guy, and I still think Bobby Green beat Rafael Fiziev. And that was a fight where I've always been kind of iffy on Fiziev because I still think Bobby Green beat Fiziev. Which, again, I see it both ways, 100%. I can see the victory for Fiziev, but I honestly still think Bobby Green wins that fight. I will make the argument every single day Fiziev or Bobby Green comes up. I still have, honestly, 29-28 for Bobby Green. I can still see 30-27 for Bobby Green. I am just saying, but that's not going to alter my pick at all. And Fiziev, of course, fight before that, he finishes Renato Moicano in the 1st round by TKO. This is an really interesting fight. Because, again, Fiziev's a very good technical striker. Fiziev has got power. But Justin Gaethje, again, has got a lot of power as well. Don't underestimate the power of Justin Gaethje. And I think a lot of people are hating on Gaethje because the way he fought Charles Oliveira in the fight where Oliveira walked him down and Gaethje really just went for it early. And yes, Gaethje fought that fight horribly. Do I think he would have won if he didn't fight the fight like that? No, probably not. But he did fight that fight horribly. Instead of that fight potentially ending in the 2nd and the 3rd round, Gaethje got it over within the first 3 minutes and he took his ass beating. He did knock down Oliveira twice, which don't forget that. But again, that was crazy Justin Gaethje. But no matter how Gaethje fights, he's always going to have a chance because of the power he presents. Because Gaethje throws hard. And the leg kicks, he throws them hard as well. Fiziev's going to throw very hard leg kicks as well. That's why this fight's going to be so interesting. But again, I would say Rafael Fiziev's just a less crazy version of Justin Gaethje. He's not going to get in a firefight with Gaethje. Well, he's not going to get in a firefight by himself. He might get into a firefight with Justin Gaethje, though. Because you saw how Fiziev fought Bobby Green. Bobby Green was talking to Fiziev, and Fiziev was like, all right, I'm just going to go for it. And they were throwing back and forth. If Gaethje gets him into that type of fight, and if Gaethje is going to fight crazy like that, that's what he wants. He wants Fiziev to get in this crazy back and forth brawl with him because then maybe Justin Gaethje catches him, maybe Justin Gaethje clips him, and Gaethje sits him down, he'll knock him out and win the fight. But if you get a measured approach in this fight at Justin Gaethje, you get a guy who is picking his spots, like in the Tony Ferguson fight. In a fight that he was not supposed to win, just like this one, he's not supposed to be Rafael Fiziev. But if you get a Justin Gaethje who is sitting there and he picks his spots, I think it's real interesting. I really think it's interesting. I think Fiziev's good, and all week I was going to pick Rafael Fiziev, but I keep looking back to that Tony Ferguson fight about how everyone picked against Gaethje, and everyone said Ferguson was going to go right through him. The first fight in Jacksonville after the pandemic started, and I was pretty much one of the only people who picked Justin Gaethje to win that fight. I'm picking Justin Gaethje to beat Rafael Fiziev. Call it a little bit of a biased pick, I know. There are few guys in the UFC you're going to find biased picks from me on. You're going to find, I mean, again, I will make my argument why I think these guys are going to win, and I seriously think Justin Gaethje is going to beat Rafael Fiziev. But there's very few guys, if you watch the channel, that I'm going to make slightly biased picks on him. And it's going to be, well, I guess John Jones, but John Jones, I'm not going to have to make an argument, and I'm not going to have to, talk myself into picking John Jones. But Colby Covington, Michael Chandler, Justin Gaethje, Aljamain Sterling, even though I picked against him once, we'll not talk about that. And then honestly, Ode Osborne. I really like Ode Osborne. I really like the Picasso of MMA. Those are my guys. Dominic Cruz too. But I think Gaethje's gonna go in there. I think he's gonna knock out Rafael Fiziev. I think you're gonna see the measured Justin Gaethje, and I think Fiziev's gonna open himself up. I know Fiziev's very good, and Fiziev barely doesn't get hit. But I've seen fights before where, again, he has been hit in the past, and depends what style of fight we find. Again, this could be the complete opposite. Gaethje could just get melted in the first round. I can 100% see that happening as well. But give me the highlight, Justin Gaethje, to get back in the win column. He's going to knock out Rafael Fiziev, and he's going to get it done in the first round. Gaethje gets back in the win column, first round knockout win over Rafael Fiziev. Okay, main event, Leon Edwards, Kamaru Usman for the third time. It is the rematch of their fight at UFC 278 in Salt Lake City, where Leon Edwards shocked the world, head kick, sits down Kamaru Usman, and wins the world championship in a fight that he was down 3-1 in that fifth round. Eventually, again, he hits the head kick and he knocks out Kamaru Usman, winning the world championship. And here we are, Usman Edwards 3. What has changed since that last fight? Really not much, because honestly, that fight wasn't that long ago. I mean, Usman's 38, I believe, or is he 37? Usman's getting up there in age. He's 35, excuse me. I thought he was older than he actually is. He's 35. He fought, 7 months ago, that fight was? Head kick knockout. I mean, Usman was out cold, don't get me wrong. Like, that was the first time Usman's ever been knocked out. It was a crazy finish for Leon Rocky Edwards, sure. But what, again, really changes from that first fight? Because it was a fight where, again, we remember it for the knockout, and it will be remembered for that crazy finish Rocky Edwards had. But don't forget, Kamaru Usman was winning the fight up until that point. He was. I am no Usman fan. I'm really not. Again, I just said in the last prediction when I was talking about the Gaethje fight that Colby Covington's probably my favorite fighter, right? And so I am no big Usman guy. But let's be honest, what changes from that first fight? Yeah, sure, Leon Edwards took him down, and Leon Edwards definitely wins that first round. 100% he does. He takes down Usman in the first round, he's up 1-0. But in the second round, okay, Usman's out striking Edwards. Third round, he's out striking him, he's out wrestling him. Fourth round, more of the same. Usman's banked 3 rounds. That's why that knockout is so memorable and so great, is because, again, Edwards was going to lose the fight if he didn't get the finish. And that's why that was so great, and it was only a minute left, right? Only 50 seconds left in that fight. And Usman gets knocked out by Leon Edwards. That's what makes that so great, sure. But again, Usman was winning the fight up until that point. And now, maybe we see a completely different Usman. Maybe we see an Usman that is not ready for the second fight, who is in shambles since getting knocked out. That could happen, but let's be honest, it likely won't happen, okay? I mean, I think, again, and it is in England, it is in Edwards' backyard, which does change some things. But again, there's a reason Usman's still at minus 250 or minus 245 and Edwards at plus 200 around, right? Because Usman was winning the fight up until that point. We will see, because, again, things change after you lose a fight. And after you lose a big fight, after you lose the championship, after having it for a while, and especially getting knocked out like Usman did, sure. But I think Usman should be able to go back in here and win this fight. I think he's going to. I know I gave away the prediction a little bit early, but I think Usman's able to go in there. I think he's able to out-wrestle Leon Edwards. I think you're going to see a very wrestling-heavy style approach for Kamaru Usman in this fight. I think it will be very reminiscent of the Tyron Woodley fight, but where Usman's not able to take down Edwards as much, but I think he's going to control Edwards a lot up against the fence. I don't know if it's all that entertaining. We said this in the second fight with Edwards and Usman. And it was something that Colby Covington said, and it was true. Usman fell in love with his hands. He 100% did. Because again, you saw that in the Masvidal fight. He knocks out Masvidal, and then Usman thinks he's some crazy striker, which, don't get me wrong, he's a good striker who's got really good power, but if he goes standing with Leon Edwards for 25 minutes, he will likely lose. If he does not pose any threat to the wrestling, again, Edwards will win the championship or retain the championship against Usman. But it's something that Colby Covington said before his second fight with Usman. Yeah, Usman fell in love with his hands. And it was a result of the Masvidal knockout. And sure, in that second round against Colby Covington, Usman does knock him down twice, but I'll make the case, and a lot of people make the case, Colby beats him in the last 3 rounds in a pure stand-up fight. Colby outstrikes Usman in the 3rd, he definitely outstrikes him in the 4th, and I think he outstrikes him in the 5th as well. So again, I still think Colby won that fight. I think a lot of people think Colby won that Usman fight. If not, it should have been a draw because Usman should have got the 10-8 in the 2nd, but that's something that is true. Usman did fall in love with his hands, and sure, he was having some success against Edwards on the feet before the knockout, but I don't think it would be smart for him to just do that for 25 minutes. That's why I think the wrestling and that out of Usman is going to be huge. And I feel like people remember that Edwards and Usman fight for, oh, okay, well, Edwards was able to knock him out. But don't forget how much success Usman had with wrestling in that fight too. Second round, again, it's a combination of striking and wrestling out of Usman, which wins in that second. The 3rd round is pretty much all wrestling, and the 4th round is more of the same. Edwards doesn't really do anything in the 4th round. If Usman's just able to take down Edwards again in the 5th, he did shoot for 2 takedowns. He didn't get both of them, and that's going to be huge. If Edwards can stuff every takedown out of Usman, or if he can stuff 80% of the takedowns Usman shoots, okay, I think Edwards is going to go win this fight. I don't think that's going to be the case, though, because I think Usman, again, will be able to take him down. I think Usman's going to be able to get Edwards down to the ground. Again, I feel like people forget that in that fight, that yes, Usman did have a lot of success wrestling Edwards in the fight. And yes, I think it was most known for the knockout 1, and then 2, Edwards finally taking down Usman with that body lock inside trip where he took down Usman in that 1st round. And I think it's known for those 2 moments. But I think a lot of people forget about rounds 2 through 4, where Usman's having a lot of success and where Usman wins his 3 rounds. I think Edwards will win a round in this fight. I think he might win multiple rounds in this fight. But at the end of the day, I'm not picking against the Nigerian Nightmare. I'm picking Kamaru Usman. Honest to God, I'll be cheering for Leon Edwards. I want Leon Edwards to win because, again, I want to see Colby Covington eventually get another title shot. And I think the way he gets a title shot quicker is by Leon Edwards winning this fight. I think, honestly, if you look at this fight for Colby Covington, I know you didn't come here for Colby Covington, but I'll say it real quick. Colby Covington probably fights Leon Edwards next no matter what. Or, like, if Leon wins this fight, they're probably going to put Colby and Leon because that's the biggest money fight. And you can have Khamzat fight at 85. Shavkat's likely not going to get the Colby fight. If Usman wins, okay, then where do you go? Then you probably have Shavkat fight Colby and the winner fights Usman. Or if it's a close fight, Edwards fights Usman again. I doubt it, though. I think Usman's going to win, though. I'm going to take Kamaru Usman to win by unanimous decision. That's the pick here. I think Usman's going to out-wrestle Leon a lot. Again, I said it like it was going to be like the Tyron Woodley fight. Maybe not as dominant wrestling-wise, but I think in terms of entertainment level, I think it might be just that. I think Usman is going to pressure Edwards, push him back against the fence. I think Usman's going to clinch a lot with Edwards. I know he got made fun of for his foot stomps, but I think you're going to see some foot stomps as well. And I think Usman's just going to control this fight. I think Usman's going to get the belt back. He's going to get it back in enemy territory. I think he's going to be very hated on the road here in London, England at the O2. But he's going to do what he has to do to win the fight. And Kamaru Usman's going to get the belt back. In the trilogy fight against Leon Edwards, Kamaru Usman wins the world championship and he'll get it done by unanimous decision, out-wrestling Leon Edwards and getting the championship back again. I'm going to say 49-46 for Kamaru Usman. Likely the scorecards that we were on the way to seeing before he got knocked out by Leon in the second fight. And I think it's actually going to come to fruition in this fight. I think Kamaru Usman's going to win this fight 4-1. And new Kamaru Usman gets the belt back in England against Leon Edwards. So, folks, thank you all for watching our UFC 286 predictions here on the channel. Make sure to hit that like button down below if you did enjoy the video. Make sure to hit that subscribe button down below for more UFC, Bellator, and the PFLs coming up as well here on the channel. Next week, we'll be back for UFC in San Antonio. We've got Marlon Chito Vera and Corey Sandhagen in the main event. So hit that subscribe button down below for more. Make sure to leave a like if you did enjoy the video, and also make sure to comment if you do disagree with any of the picks. Got some controversial picks with this card, especially with the final 2 fights. So make sure to hit, say something in the comment section down below if you do disagree with any of them. Again, thanks again for watching. Make sure that subscribe button down below for more. And Mamba forever.